Hi, in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to do game 3 from Prep Test 47. I think that this game is best organized as a grid, so I'll show you how I set that up. We have 5 record stores, S, T, V, X, and Z, and each one carries at least one of 4 different types of music. Folk, jazz, opera, and rock. Okay, so I'm going to use these sets of elements to create a 4x5 grid, or 5x4, I guess, depending on whether you say the x-axis or the y-axis first. Yeah, so basically we've just got our 4x5 grid here, and we're told that each of these stores carries at least one type of music. So the minimum for each of the columns here is going to be 1. Okay, so when I add up the little check marks in the columns, I have to have at least 1 for each store. Exactly 2 of the stores carry jazz. So at the end of this row, I need 2 check marks. T carries rock and opera, but no other type of music. So T has rock and opera, but doesn't have folk or jazz. S carries more types of music than T carries, so S actually has to have a minimum of 3. X carries more types of music than any other store in Crescentville carries, so X has to have more than S, which means X has to have all 4, and S doesn't have a minimum of 3. S has exactly 3. Okay, so S has exactly 3, X has 4, we know T has 2, V and Z at this point still just have that minimum of 1. Okay. Jazz is among the types of music that S carries. So S carries jazz. We know jazz is carried by exactly 2 stores, so jazz can't be carried by V or Z, right, because it's already carried by S and X. And the final rule is that V does not carry any type of music that Z carries. Okay, so at this point they each have 3 options, but since each of them has to have at least 1, we actually now know that the maximum for either one of them would be 2, and they can't both have 2 at the same time. If V carries something, Z cannot carry it, and if Z carries something, then V cannot carry it. Okay. We could also say, we could write the rule like that maybe. A few different ways that we could write it, but that all comes to mean the same thing. Okay, so let's do one of the questions, right? So let's do question 16. If V is one of exactly 3 stores that carry rock, all right, so if exactly 3 stores carry rock, and V is one of them, right, that means that Z does not carry rock and S does not carry rock. If S doesn't carry rock, it carries folk and opera, so that the total number of types of music that it carries is 3. Okay, anything else that we can discover here? I mean, Z's going to have to carry either folk or opera, which is good to know. So Z is folk or opera, not both. V could carry just rock, could carry rock and opera, or could carry rock and folk. Okay, but cannot carry both opera and folk, because Z has to carry one of them, and of course V and Z can't have any in common. So now I know pretty much everything I'm going to need to know to answer this question. Okay. Oh, sorry. So which one of the following must be true? S and Z carry no types of music in common. Actually, that must be false. They're going to have to carry at least one in common. Oh, I've missed out on a possibility here. So Z can actually carry both folk and opera because V already carries rock. My apologies. Okay, so I eliminated that option because of that final rule there that V and Z can't have any in common. But actually it's fine now because V has met the minimum requirement of carrying one type of music. So V could carry neither folk or opera, right? V could just carry rock, which I did realize, but the implication of that is that Z could carry both folk and opera, and that wouldn't be a problem. Okay, so back to our answer choices. A, we can eliminate because it's possible that S and Z, in fact, it's necessary that S and Z have at least one type of music in common. B, S and V carry at least one type of music in common. So no, they don't actually have to have one type of music in common. They could have none in common, right? V could have just rock and S have everything else. C, S and Z carry at least one type of music in common. Yes, that must be true. Okay, so Z has to carry either folk or opera, or both, and S carries both folk and opera. Okay, just eliminating D and E. D says that T and Z carry at least one type in common, but it's possible that Z just carries folk and T does not carry folk. E, T and V carry at least two types of music in common. So they do have rock in common, but it's possible that rock is the only type of music that V carries, and so they would only have one type of music in common, and that would be okay. So E does not have to be true. Sorry. Okay, so let me know if you have any further questions, if you would like me to go over specific questions from this game.